fans, are you ready to brave the wild? With me, your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Brave the Wild is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Double Twist. Thank you once again for joining me today, as this will be the Minnesota Wild and NHL season preview. Yes, sir, it is another one of the annual shows, piecing things together and enjoying some long-term hockey conversation and some hope, the future is bleak in some ways, bright in others, so that's the good thing. There's definitely a bright future for the Minnesota Wild. We have a general manager that is going to lift spirits, hopefully make some better moves, this and that, and definitely has had a good history thus far as an assistant general manager with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That will again be Bill Guerin, who we talked about on pretty much the entire previous episode. Bill Guerin, general manager, Minnesota Wild. Mike Modano and Bill Guerin leading the way, and couldn't be happier about that. It's definitely got a completely different feeling that we had a mere year ago. We started hearing about Mike Modano midway through the season last year, blah, blah, blah. That's interesting. He's hanging out with Craig Leopold. Could it be? Could it be Mike Modano is going to be a part of the Minnesota Wild organization? And then end of the year, yes, business advisor, now maybe inching very slowly into hockey operations. Obviously was a big part of the hire of Bill Guerin, multi-time teammate. They're pretty much the same age. They're both, part of the American Olympic team and all that, so U.S. Olympic team, and so on and so forth. The future looks bright in that sense with a couple of guys leading the franchise. Michael Russo, locally of The Athletic, has mentioned more than once that there's a pretty good chance that someday Mike Modano will be the president of hockey operations for the Minnesota Wild. So that's obviously a long-term goal for Mike Modano. It's plain as day that that's exactly what's going on, and you could just be hearing the names Modano and Guerin as a part of the Minnesota Wild for many years, and hopefully with Stanley Cups to boot. That would be extremely exciting for all of us. We're going to be referring today to Dom Luszczyszyn, which is similar to Curtis Luszczyszyn years ago, but spelled differently. The former Minnesota Wild defenseman way back in Season 1, the former Ottawa Senator and such. The analytical guy when it comes to hockey, as he previewed the Minnesota Wild, and some very interesting finds when you go from just, okay, wow, Dubnyk, man, those are some nice numbers. He's been good. He's this and that. Dubnyk had a good game, blah, blah, blah. But then when you get more and more analytical, it's kind of like peeling layers off the onion and seeing a little different things than you might see going the old school route. Like, okay, hey, good numbers. He's a good goalie. He's solid every year. Well, yeah, okay. We'll find out who really truly is the reason why the Minnesota Wild's goaltending numbers are good. Is it the goalie or is it the players in front of him? Yeah, well, that's a conversation that we'll be getting into extensively here in segment number 1. Segment number 2 will be an NHL preview where we basically talk about how things are going to go. The seasonal, Eastern Conference flop, surprise, conference finalists, Stanley Cup finalists, same thing for the Western Conference, and the eventual Stanley Cup champion, which will be an interesting choice to some of you. Possibly, it might bother some of you as well, but luckily it will not be a division rival this time, even though I was extremely happy for the St. Louis Blues. Like, if anybody in our division wins the Stanley Cup, I was like, go Blues. Don't like the Winnipeg Jets. There's just a little bit of Green Bay Packerism with that team, I think, with the fan base. Oh, they're better than the Packer fans, but it's an interesting rivalry that's been budding, and that's good. That's good for us. Nashville, not really too excited. Colorado, not at all. Dallas, not really at all, other than maybe thinking about Bill Guerin and Mike Modano playing together on the Dallas Stars. The stuff like that makes you smile. And, of course, playing NHL 95, putting all those players together, including other members of the front office and coaching staff on an NHL 95 roster with on an emulated game system. Of course, I do own the game for real, but it's better to have it in emulation nowadays if you can have HDMI. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool having members of the Wild front office and coaching staff all working together on the Dallas Stars, because there was no North Stars, there was no Wild, so it is what it is. It had to be the Dallas Stars to be able to put that together. Pretty fun. What was I even going to there? I'm not even sure, right? At the end of the day, that's kind of funny. But, yeah, it's just an exciting future for the Minnesota Wild. Yep, Dallas Stars, not a big fan of them either. Happy it was the St. Louis Blues. They finally ended the drought. Now, well, we'll see. Good luck. Will they repeat? I don't know. Just find out. Probably not, because I said it wasn't a division rival. It's not going to be a division rival at the end of the day. Let's get caught up on some news first before we get basically rolling here. This and that. Couple of signings. In fact, most of them pretty important. At the end of the day, some of them intriguing, important, blah, blah, blah. Minnesota Wild did re-sign Belpedio. Of course, Louis Belpedio, guy I'm a fan of, and I believe he's got a future in the NHL. But unfortunately, it's just only 1 year again. So we'll be right back where we were. And all that with Louis Belpedio. So that's just going to be kind of an ongoing saga, I believe, with him moving forward. In fact, pretty much most of the defense at only $700,000. So he makes the Minnesota Wild. He makes $700,000. Yeah, only. Matt Bartkowski is the only unrestricted free agent. We have only one defenseman signed multi-years, and that's Fedor Gordeev from the juniors. Their left defense, age 23 years, with $791,667 cap hit for 3 years to go. This year, next, and the year after. Other than that, Carson Soucy, eligible for arbitration, $750. Brendan Mennel, $716,666. That's interesting. Restricted free agent. After this season, Hunter Warner, who's 24. Man, Carson Soucy's 25 already. He's not going to... I don't know if he's going to make it. He's, of course, a left shot defenseman. Hunter Warner, 24, $700K. Restricted free agent end of the year. Matt Bartkowski, veteran for the Iowa Wild, very much appreciated there. 31 years old, $700K UFA. Louis Belpedio, RFA after $700K this year, age 23. Stefan Falkovsky, 22 years of age, actually the second youngest, $698,333. They couldn't fork over an extra... Yeah, okay. An extra $1,666 or so. I don't know. I'm just an idiot. Okay. Matt Robson's a UFA right away, only 1 year. Not a UFA, RFA. Same with Capo Kakinen at the end of the year. So there's going to be some moves coming. Derek Barbeau, who is the youngest of the goaltender prospects other than the college players. Of course, Hunter Jones, one of them, drafted higher along the way. We'll see what happens there. Drew Stafford added on a professional tryout. He's still hanging around. He's still trying to crack the roster. Age 33, former NHLer for a while there, pardon me. Had some success, had some positives, had some failures, but generally speaking, was a good, solid player in the National Hockey League the last several years. His chances to make the roster, I'd say it's there, but I mean, do you want him to? No offense, that type of thing. Is it one of those things, do you want him to make it or not? Because, well, do you want Ryan Donato to get sent down? Do you want Greenway to get sent down? Cunnin, there's just no way he's getting sent down. Fiala, no. And we'll get back to how he is as well. University of North Dakota, so I don't like him. I don't like you, Drew. No, I'm kidding. Milwaukee, Wisconsin native. Not really Minnesota, but definitely lots of Minnesota ties. He's been living here for many years now. He was drafted 13th overall by the Buffalo Sabres back in 2004. Oh, don't remind me of that draft. A.J. Thalen. Oh, God. Drew Stafford, though, some major success with the Buffalo Sabres. 31 goals in 2010, 2011. That wasn't even that long ago. Kind of. It's a while ago, but I don't know. He's had some success. 52 points that year, 50 points the year after that. Kind of back and forth. He's been on the Winnipeg Jets, the Boston Bruins. I keep getting him mixed up with players on the Detroit Red Wings. I don't know why. But definitely a solid player over the years. The last couple of years, though, with the New Jersey Devils, basically fourth line, sometimes gets scratched, this and that, healthy scratch, 59 games 2 years ago, 57 last year, only 13 points. So, yeah, kind of minimal ice time, minus this, minus that. He was a minus 20, but the Devils are not so good. Of course, then again, in 17-18, the Devils were better than they were last year, and he was a minus 20. So, big drop-off there for him. Winnipeg Jets, the year before, not so good either, but he was a plus 6 overall that year. Stunk with the Jets, was better with the Bruins during a short time in 16-17. But when he first got to the Jets, he was pretty solid, and missed some time here and there. But he's been more of a kind of a, 13th forward type of guy. And that's probably what his role would be with the Minnesota Wild at this point, because you don't really want to see guys get sent down. But, right now the 13th forward is a guy named Victor Rask, and he's making $4 million a year. Drew Stafford's not going to be making $4 million a year. So I don't know. We're stuck with the doggone. We're stuck with Victor Rask, though. It just is what it is. $4 million a year cap hit the next 3 years. So I guess he's your 13th forward because he has to be, and unless he makes the roster, I guess Koivu's probably healthy. In fact, he's obviously healthy. He's going to be playing. Just not right away, of course, in terms of the preseason. Mikko Koivu in the final year of his contract. Most likely his final year with Minnesota. Will he wind up with the Boston Bruins or the St. Louis Blues? Wouldn't that be something? You never know. Dallas Stars. Gosh, no. He's gonna. There's a chance he'll play another year or two with a team that's got some promise. Maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning. Who knows? Something like that. Kind of hang out in Florida when you get older. Yeah, go to Florida and win a Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Who knows? But that's the situation. Drew Stafford is the only guy that could kind of mess up this lineup a little bit. He's had success, but not lately. It's kind of the old, what have you done for me lately? The last 3 years, Drew Stafford's barely been making NHL rosters. So he'll probably see time with Minnesota this season. He's kind of this year's Matt Reed, I think. Now, Matt Reed had some success in the NHL in the past, but got minimal action with the Minnesota Wild. So we'll see. Right now, again, he is on a PTO, professional tryout with the Minnesota Wild, is Mr. Drew Stafford. Other guys sent away and back to juniors and stuff ended their tryouts at the time. Guys that have already been sent away back to where they, back to continue to develop and all that stuff. Damien Giroux, Fedor Gordeev, Hunter Jones, Sean O'Donnell. That's funny, but unfortunately he was actually released. Sean O'Donnell, not Sean O'Donnell. That's kind of funny. Will Biden going back to Iowa. Connor DeWar, Mitch McLean going to Iowa. Brandon DeHame to Iowa. Tyler Sheehy to Iowa. Ivan Ladnia, Boca, Nicholas Boca, Dmitry Sokolov, Brendan Medal, Alex Brighton, Jack Sadik, the former golfer, Stefan Fakovsky, very young defenseman there. Alexander Kovanov, unfortunately assigned to the juniors. Man, I'd like to see him in the AHL, but maybe it's a little too early. Okay, oh man, I'm just impatient. Can't wait to see some of these Russian guys move forward. Derek Barabo will be in the minor leagues with Kaapo Kähkönen and Matt Robson. So 3 goaltenders in the AHL this year. So Derek Barabo, we'll actually see him for the first time with the Iowa Wild. That'll be very interessante. Okay, very interesting. Kaapo Kähkönen and Matt Robson. Who's going to win the starting job? I personally believe it's going to be Robson. That's my guess. I'm guessing he's going to be the starter, but we'll see. Kähkönen will probably be the season opening starter, is my guess. And again, he's one of those feast or famine goaltenders, at least in his early career. Kind of like Manny Fernandez, you could say. Like when he's hot, he's like unbeatable. And when he's not, he's extremely readable. That type of thing. So Kaapo Kähkönen sometimes gives up 4 goals in a short time. And other days, forget about it. He'll get like three shutouts in a row. The guy can be an absolute stud, but of course, again, very, very young. So we'll see if he can settle down and get better. He might end up being a starting NHL goalie someday. Matt Robson's chances of being a starting NHL goalie, I think, are there too, but career backup possibly. Maybe he might go the Alex Stalock route where he's a starting AHL guy or backup NHL guy. Who knows, though? Maybe Robson will overcome and go beyond that. He's the classic, he's the new style goaltender. It's Matt Robson, a bit larger, 6'2", not that big, but bigger than some. He's bigger than some. Stalock obviously under 6 foot, this and that. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Kähkönen definitely got some serious future to him. He's also 6'2", but much larger. And like I said, very, very, very hot and cold. But when he's hot, he's extremely good. Derek Barabo, though, no joke there. 6'6". 6'6". Yep, only 20 years of age, and who knows? Maybe he's the next Backstrom or whatever. Backstrom, Rolison, who knows? But obviously larger than all of these guys. Darcy Kemper, he's got that Darcy Kemper, Devin Dubnyk size. He kind of looks like Dubnyk a little bit. I don't know. He's from Quebec City, Canada, so do expect the French accent a little bit. Yep, Quebec City, Canada. Quebec City, Quebec area. Barabo. So he will be an interesting prospect for the Minnesota Wild. Undrafted, a lot like a lot of the successful goalies in the history of this franchise. Backstrom and Rolston, to name at least 2 there. So we'll see. Again, Robson also undrafted. Kind of like middle-sized, you could say, in his case. So, yep, off to the AHL. So Alex Stalock for sure will be the backup goaltender for the Minnesota Wild. And that's no major surprise because it's a one-way ticket to the NHL for him. That's just how his contract is. So it is what it is there. Let's get to the new contracts and such. The good, positive news for Minnesota. Of course, we started out with Louis Belpedio. He is, again, inked for just 1 more year. Boy, they're not, that just happened on September the 3rd. Took the whole damn summer to give him $700,000, I guess, against Stafford, Drew Stafford, PTO, on September the 4th. This is on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Brave the Wild. And again, thank you, Vince Germano, for retweeting the Twitter account, the release of the last show on Twitter. Really appreciate that. At VinRock44. The Minnesota Wild, it took the whole blankety-blank summer, but the Minnesota Wild do sign Kevin Fiala to $6 million deal in 2 years. So a bridge contract, kind of like Granlund a couple of years ago, was a 3-year deal, about $3 million per, something like that, 3.2. And, well, it is what it is there. And he got an increase and blah, blah, blah. We'll see what happens with Granlund. And then we're looking at a big contract, a huge contract possibly. I don't think Granlund's going to get $8 million, though. If he's anything like he was with Nashville last year, it ain't happening. We'll see. He definitely has the playmaking ability that the Wild have lacked ever since he's left. Kevin Fiala's got a lot of skill, but he has shown absolutely nothing with Minnesota so far, but at very least, top 6 forward potential with the Nashville Predators in the past thus far. Then he had that doggone femur injury. Still looked promising at times, but not as good as the year before the femur injury. $6 million, so it averages, again, $3 million cap hit, but he's getting $2.5 this year, $3.5 officially the next year, but the cap hit will be $3 million even the next 2 years for Kevin Fiala, and hopefully things continue to move in the right direction. And a couple of days later, several days later, Fiala was officially signed on the 18-year anniversary of September 11th, by the way. And then news started coming out on September the 14th. Minnesota Wild are getting close to signing Jared Spurgeon, which was really good news. I think it's actually going to happen. And then it ultimately comes out Saturday afternoon, as it started breaking in the morning a bit from Michael Russo, and then bam, there it was from Russo. Jared Spurgeon agrees to a 7-year contract with the Minnesota Wild. 7-year contract to the Minnesota Wild, the largest cap hit in team history, even more than the other two guys, again, Parise, Suter, but 13 years is 13 years and going into their 40s, which is one of the dumbest things ever. You know what? This should have been, 7 years should have been enough for Parise and Suter, because guess what? This is year number 7, right? This is year number 7? Yeah. So they'd be wrapping it up, 35 years old, and then maybe you re-sign them for another 2 years or something at a cheaper price. Or they go to the Nashville Predators or the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever. It is what it is. Back to New Jersey for Parise, finish off his career with the Devils. Maybe if they go on a playoff run, who knows, with the young guys, have some fun there. Who knows? Or just stay here and wrap things up with maybe a 2 to 3 year extension for cheaper, that type of thing. Why couldn't the Wild do this? 7 years is a lot. It's a lot. It's a huge term, long-term contract for guys that were in their upper 20s. In this case, Spurgeon's still under 30 or just reaching 30. Unfortunately, it is what it is there. But massive. 7 years, 7.75 annually. The big bucks are coming to Jared Spurgeon, officially my favorite player on the team. 7 years, $53.025 million going to Jared Spurgeon, right shot defenseman. All the intangibles you can ever imagine. Very likely. It sounds like the way Bruce Boudreau and Bill Guerin talk about Jared Spurgeon. He's the next captain of the Wild. I think it's very possible that he is the next captain of the Minnesota Wild, because Koivu's in his last year or second last year, depending on what happens. Maybe it's a 1 year extension, or he retires, or he signs with the Boston Bruins or something. But if he gets a 1 year extension, it better be lower than 5.5. But one way or another, I do think Jared Spurgeon at this time is the next captain of the Minnesota Wild. That's my belief. He's seen time as an alternate, this and that. It's been Spurgeon it's been Spurgeon. It's been Parise and Suter for the longest time as alternates. I don't think Parise or Suter are going to be the captain. I think Spurgeon's going to be the captain for the Minnesota Wild moving forward. He's young enough to have many years remaining. Obviously, that's why you sign him to 7 years. Because if you had the option to sign Parise or Suter for 6 more bleeping years, you wouldn't do it, right? But, well, we're stuck with him for 6 more bleeping years. That's a nervous chuckle, kind of. Yeah, I can't imagine why I'd be nervous about that. But, Jared Spurgeon inked for 7 more years. lucrative contract, but it's not a franchise killer. It's not $8 million like some of us feared. He took a hometown discount, so to speak, which is nice, even though he's not from Minnesota, but hometown in terms of, well, that's the team he's been on for the last several years, the team that originally gave him a chance, Chuck Fletcher. Michael Russo was talking about how when Chuck Fletcher first signed Spurgeon, after a couple of years, making under $1 million basically with Minnesota, just kind of getting his feet wet, finally getting to the NHL after not getting too far with the New York Islanders years ago. Spurgeon winds up making the team and blah, 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 has a little bit of success, and then has a little bit of success, but was nothing special at the beginning. Just, okay, he'd score some big moments here and there, and he'd make a play or two. His defense was decent, but then it just kept getting a little better. Chuck Fletcher signs him for what was it, 3 years, $3 million per, and then Russo was like, "What are you doing? Why are you signing him for that much money?" And then Fletcher was like, "Just watch, basically, just watch. I mean, there's a lot more to this kid than most of you think." And yeah, kablooey. Then he got a nice solid extension after that, and then here's the big bucks. So a nice solid extension where he's getting paid he's getting paid about $5.7 million a year. That's a pretty good extension for about 4 or 5 years there for Spurgeon. Now it's the big bucks, and this will, more than likely it's his last contract, but who knows? Maybe he'll sign for another year or two after that with us or somewhere else for a cheaper price when he's older, unfortunately, because that's how things go there. Multiple previews, they posted it from the NBC Sports, and I looked extensively on Dom Lucian's article. Again, we'll talk about the goalies here in a minute, as that's another ongoing conversation. As of right now, the lines appear to be, Eric Stahl, Zucker, and Fiala on the top at the moment. Some publications at this time have Luke Cunnin as the second-line center, but he will not be the second-line center. He's going to trade places with Ryan Donato, actually. He's going to be third line with Koivu and Greenway. Will be Cunnin at the moment, where Ryan Donato will be centering the second line. Ryan Donato, who played center all the way through high school and played it in college as well. Ryan Donato will be the second-line center at this time. We'll see how things move forward beyond that. Zach Parise, second-line left wing. Matt Zuccarello, second-line right wing. There's been back and forth with Fiala and Zuccarello on the right wing's top spot, but I believe they want him with Donato at this time. Donato and Parise, Zuccarello. It's been a good combination. You've seen Zuccarello up there instead of Fiala, though, on the top line with Stahl and Zucker, so that's probably a bit interchangeable. The third line's pretty much in stone at this moment, though it actually might end up being Koivu versus Joel Eriksson, who's been a jewel of a player in camp, and we all know that doesn't always mean anything, because Charlie Coyle was a jewel of a player, so to speak, during his time in training camps in the past, many times around. Never was a bad player, but never stood out that much. Joel Eriksson so far has not stood out all that much, other than he's a fantastic defensive player, and that's good, but you don't take fantastic defensive forwards in the first round when they're not really much of a scorer. If they're multi-tool and they're a really good defender that can score, 60, 70 points a year, okay, that could be a first-round pick, without a doubt. But imagine if Granlund was an outstanding defensive player, to go along with his 60, 70-point seasons. That's a pretty damn good hockey player right there, eh? But at this moment, some charts, it's kind of a give and take with Joel Eriksson and Mikko Koivu between third and fourth line center. Otherwise, Hartman and Foligno are going to be the fourth line guys. I just don't think Drew Stafford is going to be in there. I don't think Drew Stafford is going to knock down Donato, Greenway, or Cunnin. I just don't think it's going to happen, and I think that'd be a rotten shame if it did. It's a rotten shame for Drew Stafford as well, though. But we'll see. It's mostly because we're stuck with Rask. Otherwise, if we didn't have Victor Rask, Drew Stafford's a shoo-in to be the 13th forward. Why the hell not? But unfortunately, you're stuck with Victor Rask. He's the 13th forward. And yay. Other than that, the seventh defenseman for sure is going to be Brad Hunt, and he's going to see extensive time on the right shot with possibly replacing Pattern in some nights, maybe playing on the left side, replacing Steeler and putting Hunt with Pattern. Hunt's definitely a second power play unit defenseman. He can definitely help with that. Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin, that's kind of like a shoo-in. As the talk has been extensively here as we get into Dom's article on The Athletic. These are the guys that are carrying the Minnesota Wild. The identity of the Minnesota Wild as much as there are times I don't like this particular guy, but sometimes I love him too. So no disrespect here. Please don't get mad at me, those of you that are huge fans. Ryan Suter, and then of course Matt Dumba, who's got star potential offensively. His defense has improved, but it's never going to be like Ryan Suter or Brodin per se. Brodin's probably the best overall regular defenseman, but he's very ordinary in terms of he provides very little offense. Occasionally he can get the shot on net and help in the power play when he's put there, occasionally. But that's where he's finally gotten some points on occasion the last couple of years in the Bruce Boudreau era. That's when you actually seen a couple points out of Brodin during the Boudreau era. And Jared Spurgeon, who's, I think, how do you put this? He's a franchise defenseman in terms of the intangibles. He's an intangible franchise defenseman. He stands out like nobody in terms of it's a combination of offense and defense. High IQ. His hockey IQ might be the highest on the entire roster, and that's pretty crazy to say. Obviously, Ryan Suter's hockey IQ is very high, but there's a selfish factor to Ryan Suter that doesn't exist with some of the other players. Brodin is what he is. Obviously, he's a second-pair defenseman who is elite defensively. It provides little offense. Spurgeon can provide offense, and he had to at times, especially when moved up to the top pairing with Ryan Suter. And then Brad Hunt was pretty much he kind of was, but there was another guy that was a full-time defenseman that wore number 2 last year and played like number 2, Anthony Botetto. So other than that, Dumba's healthy, thank God in heaven, so that makes a gigantic difference as the Minnesota Wild went from an above-average offensive team to the worst offensive team in the NHL during the time Dumba was missing those 50 games. He wasn't the only reason, but it was a domino effect. Anytime you lose a guy that can put the puck on net like Matt Dumba can and can score like Matt Dumba can with that rocket shot from the right side, particularly on the power play, but can also be an absolute killer in overtime. He can kill you defensively too in overtime, but offensively, when given the opportunity, Dumba is an assassin in the overtime period with his skating and rocket shot, obviously. You lose a guy like that, it's not the same. It's not the same at all. And that killed the Wild's chances last year. To the point, though, these 4 guys, Suter, Dumba, Brodin, and Spurgeon, are the Minnesota Wild. If you want to say which players are the identity of the Minnesota Wild, those guys are the true identity of the Minnesota Wild. You can say Koivu is with his penalty killing and his good, solid defensive play. Ulrich is kind of another Koivu in a sense. You can say this, you can say that. Parise reeks of Minnesota hockey. We will fight to the end. We'll stand and defend, all that good stuff. Getting into the front of the net, getting those dirty goals, those juicy goals. Matt Zuccarello is an intangible stud. It just sucks that he's going to be old by the time his contract's up, and it's a no move. So there's difficult things there, but Zuccarello is another one of those guys who was undrafted that really became a good player in the NHL. And we're going to love the guy as long as he doesn't get hurt. That's what you pray for in any sport. The true identity of the Minnesota Wild is those 4 defensemen. And the analytics prove it. The analytics 100% prove it, according to Dom Lucian of The Athletic. They're elite. They're at the top level, and they have prevented so many shots coming Devin Dubnyk's way and Alex Stalock's way that it's helped boost their statistics over the years. But then some of the goals that get through are not that good, from in the Devin Dubnyk and Alex Stalock case. It's basically, in a nutshell, in the article, which I highly recommend. That's why I'm just going to give you a nutshell thing. I don't want to just spill all the beans and then don't bother reading it. I just broke it all for you. But I'm giving you an idea what you're looking at is these defensemen really have carried the Wild in so many ways. It's, the analytics show that Devin Dubnyk is, despite his spectacular numbers and some spectacular games, which he does have, but the inconsistency comes back and doesn't look as pretty as you think when you peel the layers off the onion. Devin Dubnyk, in some ways, has been a below-average goalie, actually, at the end of the day. Maybe he's just too comfortable with the defenseman in front of him, and that's causing that. And it's hurting the numbers, so to speak, as the puck's coming his direction, the goals he's given up that have cost the Wild games, along with Alex Stalock, who had some rotten games last year, along with a couple good ones. This and that. Is it a comfort level because the defense in front of you is so good that you get caught sleeping at times? That could be part of it, but it's at the end of the day, it is those 4 guys that are really the true franchise of the Minnesota Wild. They are the pillars of defense for Minnesota in a big way. The scoring is there, but there's no stellar scorer on this roster. Jason Zucker can be a stellar scorer, but he's hot and cold, and he's inked for 4 more years, and he will be here long term. Or so it says. So Guerin says he tried to trade for him in the first place. In fact, the trade to Pittsburgh was Bill Guerin was sitting right next to Rutherford on those trade talks. He was in the same room there during those trade talks involving Jason Zucker and Phil Kessel. So it is what it is. They wanted Jason Zucker on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Bill Guerin was a part of wanting Jason Zucker on the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I don't think he's in a huge hurry to trade Zucker. That's kind of cool. That must be comforting for Zucker if he doesn't want to leave. It sounds like he doesn't, obviously. So that's pretty cool to note that. Important thing right there. So I do expect a bounce-back season from Jason Zucker. It seemed like from day one, Paul Fenton was waiting to get rid of him. And it was about 3 different trades that got nixed at the last second, or the trade might have happened, but Phil Kessel wouldn't waive his no-trade clause. The fax machine was jammed again. Like, that's happened like how many times in the NHL when they're trying to complete a trade with the Calgary Flames. So they did not meet the deadline, and the trade didn't go through. Minnesota would have gotten a defensive third-line player, but we also would have freed up more cap space. It would have been a shorter-term contract. So that seemed to be Fenton's goal, is to free up cap space. So good for him there. But then Paul Fenton turned around and signed Zuccarello for $6 million per. If the Minnesota Wild were a team that got to the third round last year, but were really thin at right wing, like we are, this would have been an awesome signing. But unfortunately, Minnesota's not really knocking on the door of the Western Conference Finals right now. And I don't know. The guy is a lovable player in the locker room. He does a lot of intangible things. He makes the right play at the right time, and that's what's attractive about him. But I don't know. There's good and bad because it's a no move for 5 years, so $6 million per. It's a pretty big cap hit, to say the least. In fact, number 2 on the entire roster. So there's good and bad in that move. Boy, looking forward to Brad Hunt this year. Full season with Minnesota. He's going to be on the second power play unit when he's in the lineup. This and that. We'll wait and see what happens with that. Dumba, again, having him back is going to make a gigantic difference. That's just going to be absolutely huge. Ryan Donato's development during the course of the season, and who knows how long he's going to play center. Maybe he's going to turn out to be a wonderful center for Minnesota. And if that works out, I think the Wild are in really good standing there. Kevin Fiala, obviously, huge year for him. Huge year for Kevin Fiala. He's definitely in a prove-it year with the Minnesota Wild, and in an approve-it bridge contract where he'll be a restricted free agent 2 years from now again, looking for a bigger contract like Clayton Keller got. Hope for the best for that. He's got to be better. I mean, Fiala needs to prove he's a legitimate top 6 forward in this league, and he really should be, I think. Stahl's here for 2 more years, and the age is showing, and it's continuing to show, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little more coming out of him still. Parisi and Zucker, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to hang around the 50 to 60 point range. That'd be great. Zuccarello, same thing. Zucker, let's get back to the 30 goals again. 25 to 30, hopefully for him. Koivu, limited role, but we'll see. I prefer he's not on the power play very often, maybe late in games when you need to win a face-off, stuff like that. That's about it. Otherwise, Koivu cannot be on any top power play unit anymore. That's just foolhardy at this stage of his career. It truly is. Fiala needs to have some success in the power play, and that's pretty much what he is, I think, right now, a special team kind of guy out there. That's going to help boost his numbers. And again, Matt Dumba's difference making in that power play is going to be huge for the Minnesota Wild the next several years. It figures every time you sign somebody to a new contract, then they get hurt. And it's so frustrating. That's what happened with Dumba last year. But we'll have to wait and see how things go there. Very excited to have him back in the fold. Spurgeon will be with the Minnesota Wild all the way up to 26-27. Can you believe that? Because it's 8 years to go because, well, the current year is still there. $5.187, $500 remaining on the previous contract. So there you go. Greg Pattern. There was talk about him getting traded at one point, but that never happened. It just never went through. Paul Fenton just couldn't get that done either, of course. Next Steeler, Greg Pattern. Pattern's good defensively, but he makes stupid mistakes sometimes. Steeler's good defensively until he got bleeped in the head when the Anthony Boteto acquisition took place. So that was a fear. You just hope, again, that the big 4 defensemen can carry this team continually into this season. You hope that Devin Dubnyk and Alex Stalock can, I want to see them sharing the pipes more this year. There's a reason why Devin Dubnyk has had some awful games because he's bleeping tired. And the NHL these days, you're looking at more of 50-30 rather than like 60-20 type of situation. And that's kind of what it's been for Stalock and Dubnyk. It's too many games for Dubnyk. You got to get the numbers down here. Maybe Stalock in some more games. And if Stalock is awful, Matt Robson, baby. Matt Robson, Capo Kakkonen, hopefully coming up to Minnesota to replace him if need be. Stalock is signed for 3 more years, so that's interesting when you think about it. After next season, Dubnyk's contract is up. Not this season, this coming season, but the year after. 2021, Dubnyk's contract is up, and I do believe that's it. And he'll maybe resign. He'll sign with the Calgary Flames or something after that, because that's what the Flames do. They sign guys when they're old and past their prime, like Mike Smith. Even though Smith did pretty good in the playoffs, it wasn't his fault they lost. Oh, boy. Intriguing, though. Intriguing moving into the season. It's not like I'm up here preaching doom and gloom. I'm optimistic that this team can make the playoffs. They'll be fighting for that 8th seed. Nico Sturm has shown some positivity during the preseason games. He's been one of the only guys scoring. He was the only guy scoring the other night. Jordan Greenway's shown some promise. Luke Cunnin looks like he's going to be on the Wild from now on. No more AHL. Will Biden, I think, has a chance to crack the roster one day. Will Biden, Mason Shaw. Just sucks that he's always hurt. Sokolov, of course, AHL right now. I don't know. Ladnia, you hope, but again, still hard to say. Sam Anas is 26 already. Poor guy. Just stuck in the AHL because of the way, I don't know, it's just the way he is. Too small a bit. But because size matters in the NHL once again, that's where Greenway can hopefully be a huge factor. Oh boy, one of these young guys, unexpectedly, it would be nice to see him step up. I do think Nico Sturm is going to be a Minnesota Wild player not too long from now, especially if and when Koivu is no longer with the Wild. I think Nico Sturm is the guy that replaces him. And then things get really interesting as Alexander Kovanov becomes a Minnesota Wild player. You got to hope and pray. And of course, the acquisition of yet another left-wing player, but this one will be the one you want on your roster more than anybody. Kirill Kaprizov, who Forecaster Magazine NHL Preview has Kirill Kaprizov as the number 1 prospect in the NHL right now, at least according to fantasy, this and that. Number 1. That's insane. Number 1. I was just blown away when I saw that, even higher than Jack Hughes as prospects coming to the NHL in terms of fantasy, this and that. Number 1, though. Number 1 prospect. Kirill Kaprizov, number 1. Not for Minnesota, but the NHL. That's wild, to say the least. Pretty damn amazing, actually. It's going to be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to how the young guys develop. I really am. I'm excited. Ryan Donato as a center. I'm extremely excited about that. Yep, he'll be centering Parisian, Zuccarello as expected. Hartman, Eriksson, Foligno, or Koivu, Hartman and Foligno, with Eriksson possibly with Greenway and Cunnin. I want that to happen. I want to see Eriksson with Greenway and Cunnin. I do. And then eventually, I think next season, Eriksson, Greenway, Cunnin, depending on what happens with the upper lines per se. And then the 4th line, Nico. Not Miko, but Nico. Let's just call him Sturm, but Nico Sturm, 4th line with Hartman and Foligno moving forward there. So, that's weird. Ryan Hartman wasn't traded to Minnesota. He was signed as a free agent. That's weird. Silly. I don't know why this is saying that. He wasn't. Oh, boy. But I expect a bounce back here from Nick Seeler as well. He struggled so bad last year when Anthony Bottetta was brought in. That was such a doggone bummer, man. Nico Sturm, though, looking forward to what he can do long term. I think he's going to make the Wild very soon. I think he'll be skating for the Wild this year at some point, especially if there's an injury. But Victor Rask, unfortunately, is probably the guy that's going to get in there first, per se. If anybody gets hurt, particularly a right shot or a center, don't be surprised if Victor Rask suits up for the Minnesota Wild. 4th line, this and that, per se. 4th or 3rd line. And, well, hoping he can have a bounce-back year for his sake, because he's here if we like him or not. It is what it is. So, do the Minnesota Wild make the playoffs? Well, I talk about that in the second segment, but again, that's where I'm leaning. I do think this team is going to be in the hunt, very much in the hunt, very much in the mix, per se, with Chicago and Arizona for the 8th seed, but unfortunately that's about where we're heading. At the end of the day, I don't see us being a whole lot higher than that. You just got to keep drafting well. Keep drafting well and hope that the guys, the prospects move up. Bill Pedio, I don't know. I'm kind of getting frustrated. You didn't see anything. He didn't really see him stand out all that year. Carson Soucy just keeps getting older and older, and that's a shame. He hasn't broken through all that much, and he wasn't good when he was with the Wild all that much. He had a couple of good moments here and there, Sam Anat. So there's guys like that are kind of stuck. Poor Gerald Mayhew. I thought he was going to be on the fourth line and be a factor. Maybe he still could make the team. We'll see, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Ryan Hartman's kind of already there, this and that. It's that type of situation with Gerald Mayhew. But I do think Mayhew will be on the Minnesota Wild at some point this season as well, and maybe he sticks because nobody expected Nick Seeler to be on the Wild and stick around, and he's been here ever since. Nick Seeler hasn't played a single game for Iowa since he was brought up to the Minnesota Wild, so very, very cool there when you look at that situation. Drew Stafford, at this moment, obviously he's still in the professional tryout, so if he somehow makes the Minnesota Wild roster, I apologize, but at the moment I don't see him making it. I just don't. And it's nothing personal. I just don't see him making it. It sounds like he's been nothing but good so far, and that's cool, but age 33, and then again, all the young guys, and you can't really send this guy down, you can't send that guy down. I don't see JT Brown making the team at all. I think there's no chance JT Brown makes the team. Maybe you keep Stratford in JT Brown's spot. That's the only possibility you could do if you're going to carry extra players, this and that. Otherwise, Hunt and Brown. Otherwise, Hunt and Rask. Well, Hunt is obviously a guy you want on your team. We didn't sign him to send him to the AHL or to cut him. He's here for a reason. JT Brown, I think, is AHL or bust. I don't think JT Brown's an NHL player. I don't think he is. He had a couple moments with Tampa, but really ever since, he's been a pretty big disappointment, if you want to be fully honest with that one. Former national champion in 2011 at the Duluth Bulldogs. Now they have 3. Man. Victor Rask, yep, same thing. So if you're going to have three players that are in the press box, Drew Stafford will be in that position. That's the only way he'll make the team. At the end of the day, is in the press box and then getting put in situations, this and that. Stafford obviously has had moments, but the last 3 years tell me he's not he's not a guy that's going to see a whole lot of action, and he's not a guy that's going to be a difference maker for this team at this stage of his career, unfortunately. God bless him, because he sounds like a great guy. It's just that's where I'm leading at this time. You have depth with this team. That's one of the strengths, and Dom also talked about that in The Athletic. That yes, the Wild have a ton of depth. It's just the problem is there's no star. Defensively, there are a few stars. They're not superstars, but they're stars. I'd say Dumba and Spurgeon are the 2 best defensemen on the Wild. Suter obviously is a star defenseman as well. Yes, it's just too much ice time. Suter was gassed, this and that, and then that ankle, the socket, what the heck do they call it? Talus bone. It's basically a socket bone in your ankle for mobility. That's a problem when you're freaking skating, right? So it's harder to turn. You have to turn. You have to be able to turn, and it didn't help him last year. So hopefully that continues to get stronger for the ever aging and ever expensive Ryan Suter. I don't mean to bash on the guy. I really don't. It's just there were times, I don't know. I mean, I've talked about it in the past where he's not been good. I mean, too many minutes, and talk about he helped to get this guy fired. He helped to get that guy fired. This and that. He has to be on the roster all the time. He has to be getting the most minutes all the time. So stuff like that is not good. I hope that things can diminish a little bit. Diminish those minutes a little bit, for crying out loud. I think that'd be better for the Minnesota Wild long term. If anybody should get the most ice time, it's probably Dumba at the end of the day, because of what he brings, and he's young and this and that. And luckily the injury is not mobility related. It was more maybe his shot, because it's his torso there with the pectoral muscle, this and that. So definitely a crazy injury for Dumba in a fight. Crazy. Just getting literally ripped like that. That's nasty stuff. So with that said, Minnesota will be in the mix for the playoffs. Other than that, though, I'm not sure a whole lot. It's all about the prospects stepping up, the current ones and the future prospects stepping up to bring this team to higher heights in the coming years. And, of course, other guys, well, their contracts running out and us moving on and having some free agency money to keep some of the prospects as they get a little tiny bit older and earn a bigger contract, and of course be able to bring in somebody unexpected, which would be fantastic. Just don't sign them for 13 years this time, okay? That's just all I ask. Just don't sign them for 13 years again, unless they're like 20. then maybe that's okay. If they're like 28, 27, don't sign them for 13 years. That's just, everybody on the planet knew that's going to be like midway to a little bit later in the contract, going to be like, ugh, why? Why is he still here for this long, for this much? Yeah, so that's just kind of how things went with that. Okay, well, we'll be back to preview the NHL, how things will go, and how things will head into the season. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup? Who is going to win the Stanley Cup? Will it be gold? Will it be blue? Will it be electronic? Well, we'll see. We are back here on Brave the Wild. Segment number 2, we're going to preview the NHL season, so to speak. We're going to look at predictions and such, how teams are going to do. Will the Minnesota Wild make the postseason, this and that? And who's going to win the Stanley Cup, get to the conference finals, who's going to be your surprise, your flop in each conference. So we'll get started into the Eastern Conference. Last year, of course, the Boston Bruins won the Eastern Conference. Wouldn't be surprised if they're still hanging around near the top with Charlie Coyle and others. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season for them, coming off losing the Stanley Cup final. That's never fun. I can't even imagine. But we'll have to wait and see how things go there. Some publications of the Florida Panthers making the playoffs. That's an interesting choice. Buffalo Sabres. We'll see. Detroit Red Wings still have a way to go. Ottawa Senators made a very significant signing recently, but it's going to be a ways to go as well for them. Columbus Blue Jackets go from a team that was outstanding to they've lost a lot of people. The Winnipeg Jets have lost a lot of people. So publications have the Jets missing the postseason. They're back to being the Jets they were when they moved to Winnipeg from Atlanta, the Atlanta Thrashers and such, when they were a non-playoff team for a while. What a drop-off for the Winnipeg Jets after starting things off so well the last couple of years, going to the conference finals, but then getting beat pretty quickly by the Vegas Golden Knights when a lot of people thought they were this unstoppable force. You come into next season, which was last year, the next season anyway, thinking they're even going to be even better. They're going to get to the Cup Finals versus Tampa Bay and maybe even beat the Tampa Bay Lightning for the Cup. Well, I'm not so sure now, unfortunately. Again, lots of losses for the Winnipeg Jets. That just cannot feel good for them at all. That's a big deal. So, but we're in the Western Conference, Eastern Conference, back and forth. It's going to drive us all crazy. Right now, a flop team in the Western Conference, well, I don't think it's going to be the Capitals. I think they're going to stay good. There's no reason to believe they're going to drop off. Pittsburgh Penguins should make the postseason. New Jersey Devils will be knocking on the door. The Islanders, I don't know. This publication that I'm looking at right now is the Islanders missing the playoffs. They should be okay. I mean, I don't know. I think the Islanders are still good. They got the goaltender situation that's been good. The coaching. I like their roster. Barry Trotz is an outstanding coach, or should we say outstanding coach. Philadelphia Flyers are, it was a scorched earth situation, but some good drafting from Ron Hextall, which ended up costing him his job, sadly, because of, just not a lot of immediate help. Philadelphia is one of those East Coast venues where it's like, well, we have to be good all the time. We have to be good all the time. Get the hell out of here. You suck. But, well, he's got a nice situation. He built a nice situation. Chuck Fletcher's now taking care of things there, obviously. I think the Buffalo Sabres have a chance to be knocking on the door. Are the Buffalo Sabres a surprise somewhat? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a surprise. That's cute. Carolina Hurricanes, I think, have a chance to be excellent for a while. We'll see. They got that nice young roster. Their situation has been up and down the past couple of years. They were knocking on the door, then they were way out of there. Sebastian Aho, Timo Teravainen, Nino Niederreiter. Yeah, let's leave that alone. Yeah, I just love Rask. The addition of Eric Hall is underrated. So that's a loss for the Vegas Golden Knights, who I have going very, very far. That's a hint right there. Eric Hall is 28 years old already. Major injury last year, but hopefully for his case, healthy and ready to go at third line center there. Peter Mrazek and I can't even say the second guy. Nedeljkovic has a chance, and then Reimer, of course, formerly of the Florida Panthers, joining the club. Obviously, good, solid defenseman and such. I do think Carolina has a good chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals again. I think that's what I'm leaning towards right now. But let's go with a flop, go with a surprise. I'm kind of going back and forth this Eastern Conference. It could be anybody. Hockey is interesting. Obviously, nobody saw Carolina having the success they did, so they won't be a surprise. They were the surprise last year, particularly in the postseason. Just making the playoffs was a good thing for Carolina. They were always kind of up and down, and then boom, they go on a legitimate playoff run. Of course, they've won the Eastern Conference twice in their history, which is pretty crazy. I think they have a legitimate shot at it this year, at least for their sake. The flop, are the Bruins going to drop off? I don't think so. Toronto has been extremely disappointing. Honestly, for what they are, their talent, they don't match up good with this. They don't match up good with that. Boston just kind of took them down, and they've choked in the playoffs the last couple of years after having good regular seasons. Extremely talented roster. They've kept their star players, which is good for them, but obviously they've had holdouts and such. They have all the potential in the world to win the Eastern Conference, but they're not going to win the Eastern Conference. It's going to be Tampa or the Carolina Hurricanes, I think, right now. I think that's going to be your Eastern Conference final. Flop, I guess the closest thing to a flop could be Toronto, but because I don't see other teams really dropping off. I think a surprise team might be the New York Rangers. They seem to be pretty much primed and ready to make the postseason, which will be good for them. Florida would be quite a surprise to make it. I don't know about that. I think Buffalo, I'm more in the Buffalo camp on making the postseason versus the Florida Panthers. I love Carter Hutton and such. The guy's a good goaltender. It was a huge disappointment the way they dropped off. Was it Phil Housley's fault? I don't know. I don't think it was, but I guess it was. I guess. I love Phil Housley. Obviously one of the greatest defensemen ever. Of course, Minnesota's own and all that good stuff. I was quite frankly shocked the way things fell apart in Buffalo after such a strong start. I think they're going to make the playoffs. They'll be a somewhat surprise considering how a lot of people see them missing the playoffs. Detroit will probably move up a little bit, but again, it's got some time for Detroit to get back in the playoffs. Steve Yzerman, of course, has taken over that organization as general manager. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Islanders, I'm having a tough time. Columbus obviously is the flop, but is it really a big surprise? I guess we'll just call them the flop because they're not going to be in the postseason, and I don't know, I think I think Tortella, not Torchetti. Tortella is going to be doing a lot of cursing again, as he'd been a little calmer the last couple of years. He'd been having some fun with that excellent team who played a tough game, scored timely goals, good goaltending, this and that, and they gave the Wild headaches the last 3 years in the Bruce Boudreau era. Columbus is, I guess, the team that's going to flop. The team that's going to surprise, I guess it's Buffalo. Buffalo, Carolina's not surprising anybody. Again, I don't see Washington flopping. They're too talented. I don't want them to win the Cup again. I don't think a whole lot of you do, even though it's nice to see Ovechkin be happy and everything. I think it's Tampa and Carolina in the Eastern Conference Finals. And, boy, oh boy. Tampa, they choke too much, don't they? They were so good last year. And Kucherov winning that scoring title. Like 148 points. Unbelievable. And he magically shows up on my fantasy team this year. Like, holy cow, that was pretty cool. Kucherov, gotta love that. But they have some proving to do right now. So they really do. Carolina, they got beat pretty bad by Boston. But other than that, they did a hell of a job in the playoffs last year. Very impressed with what Carolina did. And my God, I think they're going to win the East. I think Carolina's going to win the Eastern Conference. I've been leaning Tampa for a while. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to take another step this year and get to the Stanley Cup final, in my humble opinion. Again, surprise team will be Buffalo. The Carolina Hurricanes will be the conference champions. The flop will be the Columbus Blue Jackets, as good as they were. It's a crying shame. They never even got out of the first round, did they? All that talent, all that gigantic winning streak and everything, kind of like the Wild during that season, that huge winning streak, and couldn't even get out of the first bleeping round. And Minnesota was the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. How many times have the Minnesota Wild been the number 2 seed in the Western Conference? Well, that year, the 2003 playoff run the Wild had, the only playoff run we've really truly had, other than getting to the second round and getting beat by the Blackhawks. 2003, the Minnesota Wild were the 6th seed. So, bummer, man. So, hopefully the Minnesota Wild can get things in order. Right now, this publication has the Wild riding 7th, which would be last place in the Central Division. And I guess, I hope not. Some people have the Blackhawks getting back in the mix again. I hope not. Vancouver jumping up a bit with some of their young talent and their improving play. Arizona Coyotes, blah, blah, blah. Edmonton Oilers, they are just a flop of flops. They never do anything. Anaheim's just old and moving on, that type of thing. The Kings, the Ducks, the Oilers will not make the postseason. Arizona versus Vancouver. I got to go with Arizona there. I like the young talent, though. The Clayton Keller contract's a little high for me. Obviously more productive than Kevin Fiala, and quite possibly that might be why Kevin Fiala was messing around so long, because he wanted to get a big contract like Clayton Keller, and, well, whatever, I guess so. Calgary Flames have a lot to prove. My God. San Jose Sharks have been around forever. Joe Thornton is back for one more year at 40 years of age. He's the Brett Favre of the NHL right now. Just keeps hanging around, boy. Brett Favre, I can't call him the Tom Brady. He doesn't have the rings to be that, and he isn't still in his prime at 42 like Tom Brady, basically. Tom Brady's been in his prime for about 20 years. Yeah, like suited up for the Patriots and won the Super Bowl the same year. Go ahead and talk about cheating and this. BS. You still have to play the game, man. So that's my take on that. Check out Purple Mafia if you want to talk football, I guess. Dallas Stars should be in the mix. I'm not sure how great they're going to be. They lost Zuccarello, so they're screwed, boy. They lost old Zucks. They lost Zuccarello, so they're not going anywhere. No, I don't know. Dallas Stars should be in the mix. They were a threat, and they were a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Little did we know, because they almost beat the St. Louis Blues. As close as they came to beating the St. Louis Blues. Do you realize how close they were to being in the Stanley Cup final? That's pretty remarkable when you think about it, because I think they would have beat the Sharks. I think the Dallas Stars would have been in the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1999, when we still called it the Stanley Cup Finals, which sounds better, but I don't know. I still like the old way more. Nashville Predators should always be competitive and all that. And, Paul Fenton's going to be hoping to be a janitor there, I guess, now. Working for the Nashville Predators, maybe selling tickets. Maybe he's going to beg his old boss to bring him back or something, or maybe not. I don't know. But the Predators should still be in the mix. Becca Rinne, you got Saros as well, the backup goalie who's going to be the goalie of the future. Nashville should be fine. Again, old Subban is on his way out, obviously. Traded in the offseason to the New Jersey Devils, who I think will be knocking on the door of the postseason with a lot of their young talent. Jack Hughes and Hershier, and, of course, P.K. Subban. Oh, yes. Subban rules. Malcolm Subban's a good, solid backup for the Vegas Golden Knights, so I think have all the talent in the world. Go ahead and hate them for being such a good team right out of the gate. It's not fair. Their fans don't know anything. Their fans don't know hockey from poker. Say whatever you want, but it's a good team. It's a really good team. Yes, there was some luck involved. Yes, it's big bucks and give us the best team in the world because we are the richest city ever and blah, blah, blah. We're a city of gold. That's why we're the Golden Knights, this and that. It's a good team. I like them or not, it's a good team. As long as they don't choke against the Sharks again, they have a pretty good shot of getting to the final for the second out of 3 years, which is freaking crazy, if you ask me. Colorado Avalanche, I think I kind of tend to agree with what I'm seeing here in this prediction. They have them winning the division. I'm kind of leaning that direction. Right now I'm looking at Hockey Forecaster, basically, the sports forecaster, the NHL preview. Just looking at this kind of for a cheat sheet, so to speak, to give me an idea. I don't agree with everything, of course. I don't see the Panthers making the playoffs. I don't see the Blackhawks making the playoffs yet. But forever, pretty much, they've had the Wild's number, though I suppose Minnesota did have some good seasons where we whooped on the Blackhawks in the regular season, but it didn't mean anything in the playoffs because it just never does. The playoffs are everything. April and May mean a lot more than November, December, January, when you're on your red-hot run, and we hate the Blackhawks. We're going to beat the crap out of them. We're going to give them hell because we hate them so much. And then here come the playoffs, and, 3-0 Blackhawks, 13 minutes into the first period. That's great. It's just so much fun to watch. Patrick Kane with his whatever he does, Showtime, or the point, the slide and point that he did. I kind of like that one a little bit. But I don't know. It sucks, especially when you hear that da 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 da, because that means the Blackhawks scored again and stuff, and it's depressing. This is a big year for the Colorado Avalanche. Golden opportunity. All the young talent, this and that, explosive talent. You got Grubauer. You got a legitimate goalie. You did a freaking awesome job. They did good. And I kept downplaying that Sharks and Colorado series. I was hoping for Sharks and Flames or Vegas versus Flames. That's what I wanted so bad. That'd be the coolest thing ever. Two teams that I'm fairly fond of, we'll say, except when they play us. Calgary, obviously, has given the Wild headaches forever. Golden Knights has been an enjoyable ride for the Wild. We've dominated them for some reason, which is cool. I like it. I wanted that series, and we got Sharks and freaking Colorado, and I was like, ugh. And then it turned out to be a really good series. It's like the first two games, it's like, why can't we see the other teams? And then it ended up being a good series, and both of them ended up being way better than we thought, and the Sharks ended up barely getting past Colorado, but they did. And then they ran into the old buzzsaw called the St. Louis Blues, who surprised everybody and won the Stanley Cup. I'm still, Jeff Ponder out there again. Gotta love the podcast there, the original St. Louis Blues podcast. Got to love what they have accomplished. And its real name is Let's Go Blues, so do check it out. It's the original St. Louis Blues podcast. This is the original Minnesota Wild podcast, you could say, other than the actual, corporate one done by the Minnesota Wild, the podcast. This is the actual very first alternative media Minnesota Wild podcast. So like it or not, I'm the granddaddy of them all, damn it. So just like Jeff Ponder, going back to 2008, in my case, 2011 and his, very cool. Jeff Ponder and his buddies over there form a wonderful show. Very enjoyable. Hearing their emotions is kind of like what I believe Minnesota Viking fans would feel, and of course Minnesota North Stars / Minnesota Wild fans would feel if Lord Stanley came to town, or old Vince Lombardi came to town, so to speak, in form of a trophy. That would be, oh man, it'd be the most beautiful feeling ever. So, very cool podcast. Listen to when they won after the Stanley Cup, and of course, Behind Enemy Lines is a series he's been doing all summer. Jeff Ponder talking to podcasts of every team, and I was the super lucky one for Minnesota. Can't thank Chris Stortz enough of the Teal Town podcast, San Jose Sharks. Can't thank you enough for recommending me to Jeff Ponder. They got a really nice long show together too. Whew, when it was San Jose Sharks time. Highly recommended. Both of those podcasts, by the way. Very entertaining series. Colorado, Colorado, St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis. Those are some good teams right there. Calgary obviously has the talent. They have the star power. The goaltending is weird. I don't know what's going on. Is it Cam Talbot? Oh, goody. David Rittich, I guess, is the best you can do. David Rittich. He's the best they can do in the net right now. He's not bad. I mean, he's not bad at all. He hung in there nicely. Cam Talbot, okay, yay. Yay, if you're a Calgary Flames fan. And the young guy there, Goudreau, needs to get his head out of his ass. I mean, he really does. Like, just getting, I understand. I wouldn't want to get hit in the hand with sticks either. Would you want to get hit in the hand with hockey sticks? We can all say what a wuss he is for that, but it wouldn't be fun, would it? Would it be fun to get that over and over into your arms and wrists and such? That would suck. But still, he's got to find a way. Mr. Johnny Goudreau, Johnny Hockey there, he's got to step up and get past that somehow. Monahan, Lindholm, what a sweet roster, what a sweet group they put together last year. It looked like it was going to be a magical season, and out they went. The Colorado Avalanche basically swept them after the Flames kicked their butts in game number 1. So right now, I cannot pick the Calgary Flames to get to the Western Conference Finals, and if they do, great. I don't think they're going to be a flop, but I don't think they're going to be that great either. Anaheim Ducks, obviously I don't have them going anywhere near the playoffs. The flop in the West is an easy choice. That would be the Winnipeg Jets. Easy choice as far as I'm concerned. A surprise team, hopefully it's Minnesota. I want to believe that. Some people have Vancouver surprising, but not making the playoffs. It'd be Chicago and Dallas. I think Dallas is in for sure. I think Chicago, it's between Chicago, Minnesota, Arizona. I think those are the three that would be vying for those final spots there. Vegas, San Jose, Calgary, easy choice. Vegas will win the division, I believe. I think Calgary is going to finish second, San Jose third at the end of the day. Calgary's going to have another really good regular season record. I think the Blues finish second. I think the Blues might actually... No, the Blues are going to ride high. They will win the Central Division. Colorado finishes second. Nashville third. So you got that. Wild card teams, Dallas for sure. So again, I had Vegas, Calgary, San Jose in the Pacific, with the Dallas Stars to be number 7 seed. Number 8 is going to be, hopefully, the Minnesota Wild. It's going to be between Minnesota, Arizona, I believe, at the end of the day for that final spot. Chicago will be very much in the mix, but for just for the sake of hope, and obviously Matt Dumba being healthy is a huge thing, which we talked about in the previous segment. Matt Dumba being healthy makes a gigantic difference. I mean, you look at the analytics of the success of the Minnesota Wild with Matt Dumba being healthy. The Wild are in good shape, and it's amazing to think of how valuable the defensemen on this team are. I mean, it's literally the Minnesota defensemen more than the Minnesota Wild. I mean, the defensemen carry the Minnesota Wild 100%. The forwards struggle. The goaltenders' numbers are good because of the defense. And it's pretty fascinating, the article we talked about in segment number 1 there, when you look at that. Just unbelievable on the Athletic there. Whew, unbelievable. The analytics for the Minnesota Wild defensemen are absolutely the reason why this team is in the mix for the playoffs rather than, riding the pine. I don't think the Wild finish in last. I think Winnipeg does. And I think it's between Dallas and Chicago, or excuse me, Minnesota and Chicago, to get the final wild card in the Central Division versus the Arizona Coyotes. I know Vancouver's going to be in the hunt. I won't even say in the mix, but in the hunt. Like, they'll be around. They'll be lurking. For the sake of being positive, and again, the health of Matt Dumba, Koivu, hopefully he's going to accept a bottom 6 role, well, third line or fourth line center, basically. And the wonderful news with Yule Eriksson Ek so far in camp, which doesn't always mean anything, because Charlie Coyle had the greatest camps of all time, and, well, he's a good Boston Bruin. Perfect fit for the Bruins. A lot of good that does us now, damn it. Ryan Donato playing center is going to be exciting. Hopefully that the success with him will be good. Obviously, the preseason, as we've talked about and looked at, has been boring so far, quite frankly. Flat out boring. Wild losing 2-1, this to 1, that to 1, 4-1. Everything is 1 for the Wild. At least we didn't get shut out. That's about it. That's how boring it's been in the scoring department. I want to believe it. Wild will be the 8th seed, yay. But hey, 8th seed is 8th seed. Things can happen. Nashville was the 8th seed. They went to the finals. They didn't win the cup. Kings were the 8th seed. They won the cup. So things happen. Wonderful things can happen if you're an 8th seed. You got to just make the playoffs, and magical things happen. St. Louis had their miracle run, but they also had a legitimate top-line center. So St. Louis is absolutely going to be massively in the mix. Surprise team, I guess, is the Wild. I guess it's just the healthy Matt Dumba, healthy Koivu is going to make a difference. Koivu not for the power play, but for the penalty kill. Maybe some power play, some big face-offs late in games, obviously, because he's one of the best face-off centermen ever. Except sometimes when we superly need one, he'd magically lose it. But welcome to sports. That's just how it goes. But as long as Suter doesn't drop off too much. Parisi, this and that. The Wild should have a shot at the 8th seed. I will give it to Minnesota over Arizona and the Chicago Blackhawks. Call me a homer, call me this, call me that, but the Minnesota Wild will squeeze into the postseason, and we'll run into the Vegas Knights or the Colorado Avalanche or the Blues, something like that, and miracles will happen, baby. I don't know. I don't think we have the roster to go on a playoff run yet, but, well, Alexei Kovanov, this and that. That's the hope, guys like that. Hopefully Kovanov is a legitimate top center someday for the Minnesota Wild or someone else. Matt Boldy has a chance to be a spectacular left wing as we move forward. But, we'll let that develop as it is. Looking forward majorly to seeing Matthew Boldy having major success, at least in college and off to the pros, especially to the pros, when the time rolls on. The flop Winnipeg, the surprise Minnesota. Yeah. Get your homer caps on, right? I'm sorry. Western Conference Finals, St. Louis, Vegas. St. Louis, Las Vegas, Colorado does not get to the conference finals, despite possibly winning the division. I think St. Louis is going to keep things rolling in a positive direction. Maybe they'll squeeze past the Blackhawks, but I think the Vegas Golden Knights represent the Western Conference versus the Carolina Hurricanes in Lord Stanley's final, if that sounds cool, I guess. I think Vegas finishes the job this time. I think the Carolina Hurricanes, unfortunately, lose their second Stanley Cup final like they did to the Colorado Avalanche years ago. In fact, I wouldn't be superly surprised if the Colorado Avalanche and the Carolina Hurricanes faced off in the Cup final this coming up spring, this early summer, spring, whatever, wonderful month of June of 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a rematch of 2001, and maybe I don't want to think of Colorado winning. Go Carolina all the way there. But Calgary has all the talent in the world to win the West, but go ahead and do it, damn it. Come on, Calgary. Let's see what you can do, that type of thing. Where Vegas has done it, and they've made wonderful additions. They've lost Eric Holla, which is not good, but he wasn't on the roster last year either, unfortunately. Marc-Andre Fleury, the only fear with him is, obviously, sometimes, as good as he is, he flops. And, of course, injuries happen all the time with him. And age. Age is what it is. Father Time is undefeated. That would be the undoing of the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoffs or in the final against Carolina or Tampa or Washington or Boston, possibly. Those are the teams I think could possibly make it. I don't think Toronto's going to make it. I think they'll frickin' lose in the first round again. That's my belief. Montreal is just a bleeping mess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know with Montreal. They're a mess. But right now, I have the Vegas Golden Knights finishing the job and winning the Stanley Cup. I could be way off. It is what it is. Last year, who did I have winning? Tampa? Well, I had Tampa winning, and they had the best record all year, and yeah. And then Colorado kicked their ass. That was fun. That was so much fun. And then Colorado almost went to the conference final. Colorado could very well be in the West Finals easily. They could win the West. The Colorado's good enough to win the West, as much as we all hate to say it. I hate Colorado. Hate Colorado. So go Vegas versus Colorado any day. Go Sharks. Go Flames. Yes. Go Nashville. I'd rather, and I don't like Nashville either. Especially, just anything with Paul Fenton related. I don't want anything to do with anymore. Anthony Bitetto suited up for the Winnipeg Jets because they've lost everybody. So Anthony Bitetto, that's automatic. They're not making anything. Anthony Bitetto, oh boy. I love New Yorkers and I love Anthony Bitetto as a person. Well, I don't really know him as a person, but they say he's a great guy and such. I like the interviews he had, but he can't play. Sometimes you just can't play, okay? Just like some of the nice guys that have suited up for the Wild over the years, just can't play, So, Mark Parrish, one of the coolest guys ever, and he let us down big time and was one of the biggest buyouts in history. Victor Rask, well, again, Bill Guerin's trying to trade him, but it's like, good luck. Good luck. I mean, it's 3 years remaining, $4 million a year. Well, yeah, and he's the greatest skater that's ever laced up in the NHL, right? He's just awesome. But he did have a 40-point season years ago, and he's still not even close to 30 yet. So that's the one hope with Victor Rask. Go Victor Rask. We'll see what happens. Very, very much we'll see what happens. Vegas wins the Cup. Minnesota makes the playoffs and probably exits again, unfortunately. I don't know. I'd like to see something cool happen with Minnesota, but it's going to be because of a young guy. It's not going to be because of Parise. It's not going to be because of Suter. It's not going to be because of Zuccarello, who does a lot of nice and tangible things, which I think is going to be a wonderful addition to this team, which is going to help the Wild make the postseason. I believe that big time. You got the jerk out. The jerky GM is gone and all that good stuff. He was good at drafting. He was mediocre to below average at trades. In fact, I'd say way below average at trades. And personnel and front office relations were F-, if we can say that. So that's just all there is to say about that. Bill Guerin obviously is going to bring a better attitude to this franchise. Mike Modano and Bill Guerin. It's exciting. I put a yeah. I mean, it's exciting. My NHL. Obviously, I put my NHL 95 roster together with Bill Guerin. I was the Dallas Stars because there's no Wild, there's no North Stars. Dallas Stars, Mike Modano, Bill Guerin, Tom Curvers. Who else do I have in there? Dean Evison. It's just it's fun. Brian Bellows, Larry Murphy, Minnesota North Stars, Larry Murphy, for like a year or so, and yeah, traded for Jim Johnson. I'm still bitter about that. It's almost 30 years later. Yeah, I talk about that almost every show. Larry Murphy. I'm still bitter, man. But, yeah, it's pretty cool to have all those guys assembled. Those future Minnesota Wild front office leaders and such, and coaches and this and that, all a part of the Dallas Stars in 1995. Pretty cool. Bill Guerin is a hell of a right-winger, boy. I got to love having him. Modano is obviously the best player overall on that team, but Bellows, the veteran at the time. It's hard to believe he was already getting old, but he was. He was a star in the 80s more than the 90s. Okay, well, I had to kind of tail off into that. This is, of course, the Brave the Wild NHL preview, Minnesota Wild preview 2019-2020. Please tell your friends about the show. It would be greatly appreciated. Please write a positive rating for Brave the Wild on iTunes, Stitcher, or Double Twist. Greatly appreciated. Or Google Podcast, pardon me. I don't think there's reviews on Double Twist, but if you do that, I'd be so appreciated. Also, there's the phone lines, 209-736-7877, 209-736-7877. It is a voicemail. Do treat it as such. Mention you're calling in for Brave the Wild. Your statement, shout out, comment, question, opine. Greatly, 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 greatly appreciated. Facebook page, facebook.com/bravethewild.minnesota. At Brave the Wild is the Twitter account. And again, can't thank Vince Germano enough for retweeting the show. Always appreciate that very much. Vince Germano, Vinrock, at Vinrock44. There's the audio submission path to take, the audio submission route. Of course, use your voice, your free voice recording application on your smart device. Treat it like a phone call. Just basically press record, treat it like a phone call. Keep it 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. Stop, save it, and email it to paladinolive@yahoo.com. paladinolive@yahoo.com. Greatly appreciated there. I will then convert it into an MP3 file thanks to Zamzar or Zamzar or Converto.com. That's an inside joke from work. Whoops. So I'm leaving it on there because I can. A couple other shout-outs, though. Minnesota Wild Global, of course, and MNW Prospects, which I'm a proud admin for. Pablo Burnett and Justin Back. Thank you guys so much for having me on that webpage. And again, Minnesota Wild Global, Scott Cavendish, thank you so much for allowing me to post links to Brave the Wild. I am more than happy to encourage any and all of my listeners to join Minnesota Wild Global and, of course, MNW Prospects. Hardcore there. Gotta love MNW Prospects. Love it so much as we keep up with all the prospects. Talked about them greatly in the first segment and such, hoping for the best for the young guys moving forward as soon as possible. Boy, oh boy, because if those prospects can step up and improve, the Minnesota Wild's chances of becoming a legitimate contender are good. That would be great. People stepping up and becoming stars rather than just same old thing. A guy who can get 40 points a year, 50 points, and just be mediocre, and you can't count on him in the playoffs. They always disappear like Casper the Friendly Ghost every postseason. So that's the fear that we got to eliminate once and for all with the new prospects. Get some of the out with the old and in with the new, that type of thing. So not everything Paul Fenton did was bad, but a lot of it was. With that said, I want to thank all of you so very much for listening. God bless all of you, and can't wait to finally get to some real NHL hockey, but the preseason will do for now, absolutely, as we continue to watch the youngsters out there getting their ice time, which is good. Other guys making the team, some guys making the team, some guys getting sent back to juniors, of course, because it's way too early, to college or back overseas, this and that. Hopefully not so much with the overseas part, because we want to keep them close. And looking forward to Kirill Kaprizov's career with Minnesota, starting hopefully as soon as April. With that said, we will talk to you soon as we start to talk about real regular season NHL hockey.